If you want to intentionally attract, sell, and close more business, then listen to our guest, Michelle Hecht. And tell you how delighted I am that you're here to speak to the listeners of the Close the Deal Without Selling podcast. So welcome and talk to us. Tell us who you are. And one of the things I would like you to start off on is you mentioned that you help humanize the selling process, and that leaves an awful lot to talk about. So I think the technical term is go.
Well, thank you so much, Ike. I appreciate it. So I am a sales coach. I work with the Sales Rebellion. Our principles are to basically humanize the sales process. And we do have an infrastructure, but we're not a traditional organization that just has a process based on, certain KPIs and, we connect dots. It's more of a holistic approach, I'd like to call it, that we really focus on the human being. We focus on the person, and then we tailor our program and all of, our courses and whatnot around the person. So for me, humanizing the sales process is something that I guess I coined that phrase, not that I coined it, but I know it's a popular phrase, but I know that it's applicable to me because I believe that while it's so important to focus on metrics and organizations, KPIs and sales goals and quotas, all of that is very, very important. But I believe over time that just the industry of sales, all of us have become so accustomed to following the rigidity of that we end up removing what makes us very unique and what makes us who we are. It's not an industry where, especially years ago, and I've been in this industry for 20 years, it wasn't always something that you got to be vulnerable and really build connections where you could take your time, and it was the long game. For me, at least in my industry, I'm not saying this about all industries, but for me, there was a very big sense of urgency, and I was always held accountable to a number versus being held accountable to leveling up as a human being, if that makes sense. So what I do is I try to help other sales professionals, sales leaders, to really take a deep dive into who they are and what makes them unique, what makes them special, their soft skills, so to speak, and find a really healthy balance between those and the hard skills that they've acquired and they've learned in their sales careers. It's like a symbiotic relationship.
I have two questions, if I may.
Yeah.
First of all, would you please illuminate us on what KPI is?
Key performance indicators or key performance index. Some people call it both.
Mentioned that you were in an industry in which the traditional sales approach was being used, and with the quotas and the rigidity. What was that?
Well, I was in the pharmaceutical industry, and it was I have no regrets. I learned so much. I made some unbelievable connections in the medical community over 17 years. Okay. And I feel at this point, I am a wealth of knowledge in different medical specialties. I don't know how much that will help me right now as a sales coach, but I do coach all types of people from all different industries. But I worked for very, very large organizations, and I also worked for small specialized organizations. And I've had some unbelievable managers, and then I've had managers that there was such a heavy emphasis all the time on the monthly goals and the quotas, and it was all numbers, and throwing up spreadsheets and comparing people on the team to the nation, to the region. It was just, there was a very strong emphasis on that and on the sense of urgency to sell. And over time, I can admit that I lost a great sense of who I was.
Well, My story also. So thank you. We are truly, connected that way.
Yeah.
Tell us about the soft skills that are missing from the traditional approach to selling.
I love that question statement. Thank you
Great.
for inquiring about that. Yeah, I love talking about it. So I know that these things have been quote unquote catchphrases or cliche over the last year or two about being more empathetic in sales and using more EQ, emotional intelligence, or being more vulnerable or having more intentionality around what you're doing. And those are very, very, very important skills that I believe are innate. I believe we all have them. We all have the capacity to make them even greater. I think that depending on the industry that we're in and the type of leadership that we have in those organizations and what the focus is and what the culture is, all determine whether or not we're able to tap into those skills and use them effectively in our sales career.
Give a description of a soft skill. What is a soft skill that everyone has at their beck and call, yet maybe unwilling or unable to use it at a moment because they don't think it fits?
Vulnerability is probably one of the top, in my opinion. We're human beings. We're not bots. I understand that artificial intelligence is slowly taking over so many things, but we are the highest in the animal kingdom, right? And we have the ability to empathize and to feel our feelings and to express emotion. And so, not that we don't do that selling, of course we do that, but in terms of vulnerability, so many people skip certain vital steps when they're trying to build rapport and build relationships because in the back of their minds, they're thinking about, I have to close a sale, I have to get a demo, I have to get an appointment. And they're so consumed with telling, like their definition of selling is telling versus really taking the time and being intentional to learn about their prospect, learn about their customer, engage in things that may not be about the sale or about the product or the service, but understanding that it's a relationship that has to be developed. And so by letting your guard down a little bit and being more vulnerable and sharing experiences and asking questions and showing emotion and being human and understanding that it's the long game, that is the most effective way to sell if you are looking for something that is long lasting, not the quick one-hit wonder.
The challenges in the traditional way to sell is vulnerability really has no place because it might have some place, but the key, it seems, in traditional selling is to convince and influence someone to come to your point of view or your product's point of view and say yes. And it doesn't leave a lot of room for, I don't know, I've been looking around for that same type of information, and it's very difficult. In what way can I help you get that information? Just being authentic. I guess if there's a soft skill that makes the biggest difference, it's authenticity. And
absolutely.
One other thing that you mentioned about going in and making your quota and making sure you get that, it comes down to it. It's interesting. I'm working on a podcast now and just recorded a segment about whose problem are you trying to solve when you go into your meeting. And traditional selling, because of the quotas and your manager saying, you got to do this.
Yeah.
It's hard not to go in going, I got to make a sale.
Yeah.
Versus going in and saying, do you really have the issues my product or service addresses? Let's have a conversation and see if there's a fit. And people are not taught to have that type of communication. What is the framework that you offer in your consulting and in your training that gives people a framework in order to be vulnerable and use their soft skills?
Great question. And I can answer that wholeheartedly when I say that the focus has to be on you first. If you don't have, you third person, if you don't have a high level of self-awareness, and if you're not tapping into your own vulnerability and your own authenticity and really understanding where your biases are, or how you think and what your level of judgment is with other people, like, you have to check yourself first. You can't learn certain skills and apply them on the job when you're working 9 to 5, so to speak, right? And then when you get home, it goes out the window and you leave it at the door. It starts with you. And that goes back to what I was saying before about my model, our model with the Sales Rebellion, how it's around the person first. There's no one size fits all. There's no sticking a square peg in a round hole. So the framework is basically doing a deep dive into the person and kind of figuring out what their journey has looked like, what it looks like right now, where they want it to go, and really doing a comparison of what has worked, what hasn't worked in the past, and where you ultimately want to be. And what does that what does that timeline look like? Not so much timeline, but what does that path look like? And mapping it out for them along the way. But again, it's more of a deep dive to start. And then when we get to the point where it's executed in their day-to-day, it really is about not just your sales walk, but your life walk, because we're interacting with people every single day for a myriad of reasons. And believe it or not, I personally believe we're selling every single day, trying to get a doctor on the phone, trying to make an appointment this week instead of 2 months from now, trying to close our children to clean their rooms, go to bed on time, put their clothing away. Everything is an exchange, like a sale. So if we're not applying these principles to our lives in general, how can we apply them to our careers?
Question is, who are you being? If you are playing salesperson and then coming home and being someone different
that was
than
me.
You are as your persona during the day, this is where I believe that emotional conflict comes from.
Absolutely.
So the question is, who are you being when you go in to speak to someone? And the suggestion that I offer all the time, and it falls back again on something you said, is to remain curious, authentic, and neutral, and think like a doctor. Your questions were so perfect, like, what have you tried before? How did it work? Why are you here to see me? All of the questions that a doctor would ask in an examination, rather than go in and prescribe immediately. Here's what our product can do for you, and isn't that great? It's like telling someone with a broken leg that I've got great headache medicine. It's
That's true.
Yeah, and that's what I see with show and tell selling, is you're being paid to get in there and deliver the presentation quickly so you can wow them. And that's not very humanizing. That's very much salesy.
And great point. But ideally, the pharmaceutical industry wanted all of us to go out and make those connections and build rapport and build those relationships and ask all those questions. But the more and more that the entire, pharmaceutical industry changed, and you didn't have enough time to do the things that you would normally do, you had to try to execute in anywhere from 30 seconds to 2 minutes, unless you had an appointment or a lunch appointment. So to try to do that in such a small time frame, you end up throwing those important things to the side and getting right to business and closing and making a couple of points. And there's no way that you can take the time to build relationships that last unless you're working for, I don't know how long to do that. I believe there's a better way, and it can be done in a shorter time frame, but there's a better way just by the way that we approach it.
Well, if you wouldn't mind, why don't you tease us with this better way that you would make contact with somebody where rapport has not been established, relationship has not been established. And I'm not big on cold calling in terms of my training. I'm
Yeah.
I understand we all have to do it, even in pharmaceuticals or whatever you're in, but you piqued my interest that if you don't have the time, what do you say?
You know, the funny thing is, sometimes it's not even just what you say. Sometimes it's just little things that you do. It's going the extra mile. It's not just looking at data about your prospect and because you know what their trends are and what they've used in the past, jumping to conclusions and making assumptions about how they need a change and they need your product or your service. It's, you know what they say about assuming, right? So an example for me, I mean, I'll even use LinkedIn as an example. I have never in my entire life, and I haven't even been on LinkedIn for a very long time. I've been like active on LinkedIn for maybe 2 years. I never ever connect with people and then immediately pitch and send them a whole bio of who I am and what I do. And here's a link to my landing page, and here's my channel on YouTube, and please follow me. And I think that that's disrespectful. I think that's a spray and pray method. I think that people honestly that do that, they honestly feel that they don't care. They don't care about what you like, who you are and what your needs are and how they can help you. They're hoping that the quantity is going to give them their quote unquote ROI
Sure.
versus quality.
And it must be said that approach works. The carpet bombing of your warm market.
Yeah.
However, the results are random and inconsistent because
Right.
you'll send the same letter to different people and get totally different responses.
Yeah.
And that is really something that, yes, you get 1 or 2 sales out of every 100 people you send this out to.
Right.
But what would your life be like if you got 8 sales out of it by approaching it from a different direction, or 50 sales by establishing relationship? And it's hard because we were all taught to go out and sell, and that's
Exactly.
what people do.
I'll give you an example because I don't know if my statement before was that specific. I mean, it's generalized because it happens every day, and I know so many people can identify with it. But for example, recently I received a request to connect from somebody that it was generic. It was probably one of those automated messages that everybody gets, but it basically said, hi, Michelle, I'm so-and-so. I came upon your profile and we have a lot of people in common. And I was very intrigued by your headline and I was intrigued by what you do. I would love to connect. Now, many people would either just accept it, right, and say, oh, okay, well, I want to grow my network and I want to show that I have thousands of connections and followers because people are focused on that. Or the other way could be, I'm not going to accept it, right? This person doesn't know me and it was generic and it was cold. I choose to take the time to answer them without connecting and say, hi, thank you so much for reaching out and connecting, requesting to connect with me. I love to expand my network and I love to add people to my LinkedIn family. But before I do, I'm wondering, what about my profile piqued your interest? And what made you decide to press the button and want to connect with me? And I put it back on them. And that to me is a way to gauge whether this person took the time, which I know already he or she didn't, but this person took the time to, I want to see, like, did you really take the time, or you're just doing a search in Sales Navigator and anyone that comes up as a coach or in sales, you're like, add. And so that's my approach. And it takes a little bit longer. And maybe my outreach and my day is a little bit longer. And I can't say that, oh, I put 500 people in my CRM today. If I only put 50, they're intentional. And I spent the time to make sure that I screen them because my network is important to me. And I don't care how many people I have. I want it to be quality over quantity.
Well, you and I made contact. I have to give a shout out to two of my now friends. One of them has been a friend for nearly 30 years, but Marcus Chan, who you might know. Marcus sent me one of those video responses when I sent him a friend request, and it just it just blew me away. And when he was on the podcast, we talked about that, and I've been attempting to do that as a way of saying thank you for connecting. And my other friends, Hank and Sharon Uloff, who have a marketing company, said that when you're looking at accepting a request, if you are in the business of networking and expanding, that he rarely accepts someone with fewer than 500 connections because he's not in the business of building up someone else's business. He said, I don't mean that
Oh, I
mean.
understand that.
I just, that if I'm going to get someone, I want there to be at least a simpatico of what we're all trying to do. So I found that helpful too. But those video
Absolutely. Well, yeah,
responses,
you just
those have
said,
been fun.
I just want to make one clarification with Marcus. He makes lots of videos, but they're personalized. You see him, he's talking to you. And even if he doesn't say your name, because I mean, how much time would it take to make videos for every single person? And thus you're working with them one-on-one. But the videos and the content that he makes is so personalized and it's so specific to so many things that it is personalized. So he's not sending links that take you to articles and YouTube channels where you have to thumb through everything and watch all the videos. That's what I was referring to before. If somebody sends you a video, just a general overview about what they do, and it's personalized, and maybe they choose like one link to send you that they know is specific to what you do and what you're about, that goes a very long way. What I was talking about before is when people just, what's the word? Like data dump, right? Like they just send you everything they have and hope that something piques your interest, that you'll connect.
Yeah, I understand. And by the way, Marcus, if you see this, you can make the checks for $50 out to Ike Krieger and one to Michelle Hecht for this great commercial, which you deserve desperately. One of the things that I'm always interested, since you ended up, if I could say that, in sales,
Sure.
and I realize a lot of us, when we're teenagers and we're lying in bed and staring at the ceiling, wondering what we're going to be someday, a professional salesperson is usually not one of the things that appears on the ceiling in front of us. So I'm curious, and this is a kind of a backwards question.
That's
What
okay.
internal dialogue did you have to overcome in order to be effective in your selling career?
I will start by telling you that I was on a road to attending law school and becoming an attorney. And I took all my exams and I was getting ready to apply. I even filled out applications. I did well on the LSATs. And I took a job when I was about 18. My mom and I went to a local health club and she joined, and I was getting along with the manager, and the manager said to me, we have an opening here. It's part-time, but you're just a very warm and friendly person. And, you exercise. And if you'd like to work here, why don't you give it a shot? So I was like a freshman in college, and I started working there part-time. And what started out as a part-time job for like beer money on the weekends turned into a 7.5-year career, all through 4 years of college. And then even 3.5 years after college, I decided not to go to law school, not to pursue a legal career, because I tapped into something that I never knew. And even though my dad was always in sales, my grandfather was with the same company for 50 years, I just didn't think that it was cut out for me. And I think a lot of people have this story, right, where they fell into it by accident and they never knew how great it could be and that they were good for it. And it was their type of career choice. And so, yeah, but that's how it all started. But along the way, I've had to overcome a lot of negative internal dialogue, because sales is all about producing. Like, that's your job. You have to produce. And you deal with a lot of rejection. And so much that if you let it get to you on a personal level, it can eat you up inside. And I will not sit here and say that that didn't happen to me, because it absolutely did. I was the poster child for imposter syndrome. I was the one that wore one mask from 9 to 5 and then put another one on from 5 to 9, way before this was mandated to wear one. So yeah, but channeling that internal dialogue is learning how to, I hate to say this, but having a thick skin and understanding that it's not you personally. It's not about who you are, where you're from. It's more about people not being ready, not being sold on the value of what you're providing, not being the right timing. There are so many variables, and it's so easy to fall down that rabbit hole and think that it's about us. And I think that that's what beats people down. And it took me years to overcome that.
Well, one of the things that I find, and I talk about this all the time, is we have been told by our parents and our parent substitutes, like teachers and clergy, truisms that exist all around the world, no matter what culture, no matter what language, and that is never speak to strangers.
Yeah.
And children should be seen and not heard. And when you think about it, we as salespeople have to go against everything we've been taught, because that's exactly what we have to do. We have to speak to strangers. And the ability to find a way to do that is just a real challenge for some people. And you mentioned about playing a part. I dabbled, I know it's hard to say, I dabbled as a professional actor. And I was doing this since I was pretty young. So when I started selling, I took on the role.
Yeah.
And I was very good at it, and I hated the part. And that's when I ended up in the late 80s putting together my communications model. But the internal dialogue, including playing a part of, oh God, I have to go talk to somebody. They don't want to talk to me. We're strangers. That was a big hurdle. And I'm inviting all of the listeners to see that Michelle and I went through the exact same thing. And it's not just break through it. It's find yourself a communications process, both internally and externally, that will help you in terms of having an authentic communication. What do you find with your clients? If there was a bell curve of the issues that they're facing, what would be the issue that you see most often that makes people feel, oh God, I need to get coaching?
That's a great question. I don't think that people fully understand the role of a sales coach. I think that people, they probably take a step back and say, oh, a sales coach is somebody that's just going to help me overcome objections or be able to present better or do better demos, or, they're just going to help me get from whatever percentage I'm at now to the next level. And I'm sure there are tons of coaches out there that specifically work on that and have an amazing, playbook and have all these different cadences. And I'm sure they work really well. I've taken different courses over the years too, and I've gotten certifications, and that's all well and good. For example, I took a course with Harvard Business School online this spring, and it was in negotiation mastery. But I had to go through all of the different, like webinars, and there were, clips I had to watch, and there was interactive exams, and not exams. There was just all different types of things that we had to do. We had to put together, and there were timelines, and we engaged with people from all over the world, and it was great. There were different initiatives. That was the word I was looking for. But after I got my certificate and I finished, it's now my job to go out, and on day one, I have to execute, right? So a sales coach is very different in the sense that we're not just putting all this content in front of you and saying, okay, read all of this, watch these webinars, do these tests, get good grades, pass with whatever percentage that you do, and then you'll be good to go. I walk alongside of people. It's accountability. It's assistance. It's, I'm holding your hand for at least 6 months. I'm holding you accountable. There's work to do. And we do a deep dive into everything that you do. And it's not even, for me at least, it's not just all career related. I really feel like I'm a hybrid between a sales coach and a life coach, because I do like to do the deep dive into what makes the person tick. What are their fears? What are they afraid of? What would they, if money wasn't an option, what would they use in their career? What about them do they love that they would love to put out in the world if they weren't afraid of judgment? When I get a better idea of what somebody's about and I figure out where their insecurities are and where they're vulnerable, I empower them with their own superpowers. I encourage them, I coach them, and then we weave in all of the sales techniques and methods and things that we know work. So I know that's a long answer, but it's the only.
It was a good answer, though, especially the part about overcoming objections. I know I'm a member of a couple of different groups, both on LinkedIn and other social networking platforms. And one of the big conversations is, how do you overcome objections about X, about Y, about Z?
Yeah.
And I hated objections so much, because how could they not have understood my magnificence and my product's magnificence the first time around? What gives them the right to object?
Have you ever used like a script? It's laughable. Okay, when the person gives you these objections, nod and show understanding and repeat what they said so they know that you heard them, and then show empathy. And I'm like, oh my God, really? Really? That's all it takes? Because if that's the case, then I should have been at 100% of goal every single year. That's not how it works.
Ability to have that authentic conversation we've been having. Once they realize that the prospect realizes that you're there to solve their problem and not yours, something almost magical happens, because they tend to let down the buyer defenses that make all of us go nuts and produce objections, and end up, if you ask the right questions, telling you how and why they feel your product will help them resolve their issue and solve their problem. And if indeed they're the ones giving, quote, the presentation, who are they going to object to? Yeah. And so if you can get into this conversational soft skill mode that you've been talking about, and I could not agree with anymore, you end up in an environment where it's no longer, hey, you want to buy something from me? Because I got something to sell you. And I need to acknowledge you and your team for using what I like to refer to as a kinder and gentler way to sell, which is, to me, what we're going to need after this whole COVID thing, because people, they don't want to get in front of anybody, let alone a salesperson. And and then I'll put a sock in it. We all look for a way to establish rapport. We've never had a better rapport building topic than COVID.
That's what I said.
That is really sad, but even just, how are you getting through this? What are you doing? Yeah. So that's important. What we're coming down to our end now, and what I would like from you is one thing that you would say, of all the things that you could share with the listeners of the Close the Deal Without Selling podcast, that you think might assist them in being more effective and more productive in their business, in their life. What would that be? And it better be good.
I hope it's good enough, but
it will be.
I'd have to say that if anyone listening, if you ever believed anything at all, especially a piece of advice coming out of this year regarding your sales career, all of the things that are going on in your head, it's the self-doubt, the insecurity, these are all limiting self-beliefs. that's all they are. And I, in my heart, know, I know this and I believe this. Feelings are not facts, okay? They're feelings. You could feel down, beaten up, insecure. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. Your numbers are not good enough. You're not the employee that people thought you were. Whatever it is, you're not going to get promoted. You're not worthy of that title or whatever it is. These are all feelings. They're not facts. And when you learn how to control your feelings by understanding that we are products of our environment, and that especially now this year, it is so easy to get beaten down, not just about our careers or lack thereof, or family dynamics, or the state of the world, politics, health. It is so easy to let those things in and make you feel so much less than you are. And if you can learn how to compartmentalize that and understand that each thing has its place and that you are enough and that you're worthy and that you didn't come this far to only come this far.
Oh, great line.
You have to believe that. I was at rock bottom a year and a half ago. If there was a basement to rock bottom, I was in it. And if I can pull myself out after being the imposter syndrome poster girl over 17 years, anybody can do it. Anybody. Yeah.
Well, that you lived up to it better be good.
I hope so. I thank you.
That was so right on, especially for this time when people are having to deal with so much new that they're, talk about a disruptive environment. My goodness. And we are about to see the other side. And once we get to that point, the question is how do you separate yourself not only from your competition, but from your pre-COVID self and actually be a more effective, more understanding, and more authentic salesperson? Yeah. Michelle, how do people get in contact with you? And what, if anything, would you like to tell people about that your company is doing that they might be able to participate in?
Sure. Well, people can get in touch with me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn at Michelle Hecht with the Sales Rebellion. I'm also on Instagram as Phoenix of the Sales Rebellion. Phoenix. Yeah, because talk about regenerating and coming back stronger and better each time. That's what I'm all about. And we have a lot of different really exciting initiatives that are coming out early next month. I can't go too much into detail about it, but there'll be things that involve, community and groups and an app and just so many initiatives that are tailored either for the individual or a smaller group or big companies. But we have a whole team of coaches and we all breathe life into this. So we're trying to change the game. That's what we're doing. Change the game.
Well, please give your teammates a virtual clap on the back from me.
Absolutely.
And I can assure you that as we stay in touch and I find out more about what you're doing, I will do my best to bring everybody up to speed because we are kindred spirits in our approach to this. Our framework might be a little bit different, but the difference is, that's why there's so many recipes for making some wonderful dishes.
Yeah.
On behalf of all of the listeners of the Close the Deal Without Selling podcast, I want to just say thank you from the bottom of my heart. This has been the type of conversation that I think everyone really wants to hear, not being told what to do, but the mindset in which you can actually do it. And I think that if there's one strength that I'd point to you and say that is something that you might want to talk to Michelle about, it would be that checkup from the neck up. And I'm so pleased we had this chance to have this conversation. Again, thank you very much. Take care to you and all of yours. Stay healthy, stay safe, and thank you for being on the Close the Deal Without Selling podcast.
Thank you so much, Ike. I appreciate it.